Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Fake Accents Unite, another edition, I should say. We are, unfortunately, this evening denied the presence of the Britisher, despite the fact that I know that deep down in his heart he would appreciate the incredible rack that I am sporting in the thumbnail for this particular edition. Instead, I've got myself a posh, privately educated pirate to join me. Good evening, Joz.
Good evening. Hello, everyone.
Nice to see some of the regulars in the chat there. Time Stealer, Right Honourable Affairs, Met, etc. Colin P. Smith, nice to see you. Bit of a strange one this week, I must say. After the debacle that was last week's stream. Those of you who were here will remember, of course, we had to end it due to internet issues. Hopefully no such issues will arise with this one. But ahoy ahoy to everybody. Joz, if you'd care to introduce yourself, kind of explain what it is that you do, and shill your channel a little bit, I guess, and what's going on with that.
Sure, yeah, my main platform is Twitter, so if you want to see what I have to say, then I'm normally over there. I do the occasional stream on my YouTube channel. Tend to talk about sort of science, tech, futurism, so a little bit different to what Mark normally talks about here. I guess that's basically me.
Fair enough. So Britisher, unfortunately, is ill. He's only just managed to get the week that was out this evening rather than earlier, so that is the nature of this thing. I was hoping to get Callum from the Lotus Eaters on, but he's a bit knackered of politics after work, unsurprisingly, so bless him there. Time Stealer says, NSO, have you weighed in on the Nescafe Gold question? Also, everyone should subscribe to Time Stealer if they enjoy food/beverage related meta-memery. Yes, the Time Stealer has been providing invaluable commentary on coffee and beverages and food and whatnot, clearly. The Nescafe Gold question, is that whether or not Nescafe Gold is good enough to drink? I consider Nescafe Gold to be incredibly bland as far as coffees go, but maybe that's part of its charm. It's just it's that nice, the comforting taste of mediocrity.
You do get things that are so bad they're good. I guess in that case, it's so mediocre that it's good.
So mediocre, yeah. It's not so, but well, it's like coffee. The first time you have a coffee, it's bitter, and then you acclimate to the taste. Proper coffee, I mean. And whereas clearly Nescafe Gold is the the working man's entry level coffee beverage, and therefore the staple of mediocrity is valuable for the gateway that it provides to other higher quality coffees. Clearly,
exactly.
Right Honourable Fizz says, Joz, you're the new Britisher?
Yes, I'm going to have to put on some sort of fake accent for this, because I'm not sure I can quite handle that.
I mean, I've heard you in real life, and clearly this is the fakest your accent has ever been. So
exactly, yes.
You sound like...
I'll have to just automatically choose the middle ground on every conceivable topic.
Nobody knows that you're actually secretly sort of Liverpudlian underneath all of this.
Yes, I'm a secret scout, so it's spent many years training it out of me.
I mean,
beaten out of me by my parents.
How else would you manage to cultivate a life of piracy if not from one of the largest port cities in the country?
Yes, I mean, normally pirates have a bit of a farmer accent, don't they?
A farmer?
Yeah.
Farmer?
Yeah.
Your
Ooar.
Hand over your valuables. I can't imagine.
I'm getting called a driller. I'm getting called a driller in the chat.
I be the most feared pirate on the seven seas. Well, of course.
And over your booty.
And over your booty. I think it's just. Harry and Gladive, Jaws is an absolute driller. If only we knew what drillers were. What does a driller mean? Nobody knows. And
well, I was actually on the stream where Harry came up with it, so I'm fully aware.
Keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. We don't want people to.
I'm a keeper of knowledge. I am.
We don't want people to know that Harry and Gladive has a YouTube channel and push them towards it. That would be horrific.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, everyone go and subscribe from Harry and Gladive.
Aaron Telford, of course, says all coffee is disgusting. I see. I mean, like true British born and bred tea is superior, but I do enjoy a coffee on a cold winter's morning as well. I have to say,
Whenever I visit America, I will be yeeting jugs of coffee into the harbour.
Yeah, but Americans can't do coffee either. I think we just discussed this on a previous stream, but they just add so much dairy to it and so much syrup that it's no longer.
True.
It's so far. It's like there was some kind of horrific viral TikTok going around, and I hate TikTok, but it's virtually impossible to avoid these days, where there was some girl saying, I'm gonna create the perfect iced coffee. And she starts off by obviously adding instant coffee to something, and you're just going, oh, okay, Americans, instant coffee, puts it in the blender, then pours in literally 3/4 of a jug of milk, followed by cream, followed by syrup, followed by some kind of weird, what I can only assume is some sort of Nesquik powder, then blends that all together, then takes it off, and shoots caramel into it. And that's the perfect.
Americans just are the problem in any conceivable situation.
It really is. Why is it that all pirate jokes are bad puns? Jaws?
Pirates are highly intelligent. The humour is just too highbrow, obviously, for Colin P. Smith.
I mean, Colin clearly hasn't played The Secret of Monkey Island for the amazing repertoire of witty comebacks. It's like, you duel like a dairy farmer. How appropriate. You duel like a cow. I love it. Pirates were actually depicted with a West Country accent for a long time.
That's what I said, yeah, farmer accent.
I just couldn't imagine a West Country Blackbeard coming after me.
Well, Blackbeard was supposedly from Bristol, right?
Yeah, but back when Bristol was cool and didn't yeet statues into the
It is true. I guess it's the closest part of the UK to the Caribbean.
What, apart from Cornwall?
Yeah, Cornwall. That area all has a similar accent.
There we go. Did pirates drink coffee? Probably not.
I don't know, actually.
Probably not. I mean, you had access to coffee beans, but you didn't really... you'd usually have to grind them, right? So, I don't think...
Which is better, rum or coffee?
Rum or coffee, or a combination of the two. A roffy.
Yes, I guess if you adding whiskey, it's an Irish coffee. If you add rum, it's a Jamaican coffee.
A roffy or a waffy. It has to be that way around, because if you add coffee to rum instead, It sounds just too horrific for words. So this is a family show, clearly, so we won't have that. I thought not, but I enjoy confusing Mark. Right. So speaking of piracy and ships and whatnot. One of the chief stories from the past week has been the jamming of the Suez Canal by the people have called it the Ever Given and the Evergreen. It's got Evergreen.
I believe Evergreen is the company that it's part of, and the Ever Given is the name of the ship.
I wonder if every single ship is called the Ever something, right? That might be something going on.
I mean, if you owned a shipping company called Evergreen, you would as well, right?
Eric Kai's calling me out in chat saying, Mark loves Vietnamese condensed milk coffee. I do, but it's just...
that sounds grim.
It's glorious. It's a double shot of espresso with just a dash of extra hot water in it. And then on the bottom of the glass is a very thin layer of condensed milk. And because the condensed milk is so thick, it doesn't mix with the coffee. So what ends up happening is you're sipping this incredibly bitter upper level, and you have it with a little teaspoon, and you can scoop little bits of condensed milk to add sweetness to you to take the edge off the bitterness, and then when you get sick of doing that because it's all very hipster, you can then mix the two together so that you shot the rest of the coffee as a really sweetly mixed.
So it's kind of like coffee, but with a bitterness accelerator or decelerator, like a throttle for it.
Yeah. You can choose how you get to have the joy of a bitter coffee, a sweet coffee, and a regular coffee all in one. Basically, this sounds degenerate, but it's pretty good. Pretty good.
Far too extravagant.
So yes. Yeah, but the Suez Canal thing, which has spawned memes like the lovely one that you saw as the thumbnail for this video.
The memes have been top tier, I have to say. They are very good.
But where is this? They've reopened it now. They've actually managed to free it. They basically was 1300. I don't know if this canal. It's the only one. If you look at there's quite a few compilations out there of the map where the ship is before it blocks the channel, and every other ship of a similar size is just going down the channel in a normal way, and then all of a sudden the ship just goes up and stops and turns, and that's the way it is.
It's to draw a slightly odd shape in the the Red Sea. Before.
Yeah, that was a bit before. You wonder if the captain and his crew were drunk at the time. Because,
what mad lad? Yeah.
Because you look at it and you go, I don't know if it was actually drawing a penis actually, because it looks like it's three circles really, but one is just slightly more elongated than the others.
Yeah, the central one.
But I look at it and I go, maybe they were putting a holding pattern, but it's unlikely. But the the air traffic control day is coming back to me, but I don't know why they would do it in the middle of the sea. Who knows? But yeah, so they're going down. They claimed that there were vicious winds and a sandstorm was going on and that sort of thing. But as no other vessel appeared to have issues, I don't know how true that could possibly be.
Yes, it's a bit of a strange one. I'm sure all the Somalian pirates were rubbing their hands together with glee watching this.
Oh dear, I've seen some great memes come out of it. One of my favourites has been the petition to add another ship. So they got 500 people to sign a petition saying, please add another ship to the blockage. The same thing.
I saw people saying they wanted to put like a ramp over the ship so other ships could do a sick jump.
Yeah, it's sort of a la Half-Life 2 or something.
Yeah, get some air over the top. I mean, one thing that kind of struck me was the absolute size of the thing. Like, it's the size of a skyscraper. The thing is massive.
Yeah, I mean, it's 400 meters long. So it's nearly
it's ridiculous.
It's nearly half a kilometer. It's absolutely ridiculous, which just sounds more impressive than a quarter of a mile.
Even a quarter of a mile, that's like a distance you'd walk. That's the size of a village or something.
A quarter of a mile, maybe a hamlet. But I don't.
Right, I live in a very small village then.
Very small village. Very small village. Right. I think I missed a super chat there. Mr. Gently Benevolent says, "Sup, ya tidas."
Don't know what it could possibly mean.
I can't know. I mean, if I read it backwards, it says "Sadit a puss." I don't know what it could possibly mean. I mean, clearly
sounds Arabic.
Some form of Aramaic, some ancient. Are you trying to teach us something, Mr. Gently Benevolent? I couldn't possibly say. Oh my goodness.
All I'm saying is it shows how modern life is still dependent on the legacy of the British Empire.
What, the Suez Canal? Yes.
Yes.
If
only the Americans supported us.
Speaking of Americans, the number of Americans who thought it was the Panama Canal, because that's the only one they're aware of existing in the world.
Yeah, I was chatting to some American friends the other day, and they were saying like, "Oh, it's the largest in the world, second only to the Panama Canal, right?" And I'm like, I'm fairly sure it's got more shipping than the Panama Canal.
It's quite large. It is the bridge between Europe and
Asia.
Asia.
Otherwise, you got to go all the way around Africa. Return to tradition on the Cape of Good Hope.
So, yes, speaking of the British Empire, nice segue there, Jaws. Perfectly planned.
You're very, very welcome.
Nicely done. There's the issue. So, I'm sure most people will be aware that there's been some dodginess over WhatsApp privacy concerns. So a lot of people have been moving to Signal, although not that many. And it's to do with the terms and conditions, basically meaning that, what was it, they could use metadata from conversations to like serve you ads or something.
Ads on WhatsApp?
No, no.
I guess if
because it's owned by Facebook, so it would serve you. So it would allow WhatsApp, or the theory was that it would allow WhatsApp to, if you agreed to their privacy policy, it would allow WhatsApp to share private messages with Facebook. And so it seems weird, given that WhatsApp makes a big deal out of the fact that it's end-to-end encrypted, right?
Yes.
So according to The Verge, WhatsApp has announced that it's delaying the introduction of the privacy policy, which was supposed to come out in February, and it basically said that it's going to rehash it for May. So we'll see how that goes. But what they basically didn't say what WhatsApp can see about the messages sent between users, which is the metadata, which is basically who you're messaging, how often, who's in which group chats together, and several other things.
Yes, it's metadata is data about data, obviously. Yeah. So it doesn't say what you've sent.
So it's a little bit unclear, but basically it's a really weird thing with social control. But a new controversy has come out with WhatsApp, but this time it's not WhatsApp related as much as it is British government related. So if you're a politician and you don't want to get caught saying something dodgy on WhatsApp, what you often do is you set your WhatsApp so your messages self-destruct after a certain period of time, and so they only exist for 10 minutes or something, and then they disappear. So apparently, ministers could be banned from using self-destructing messages on WhatsApp or Signal for official business if a legal challenge is successful. So obviously, there's no issues with private messaging because they're acting as private citizens. But transparency campaigners have sent a letter to the government arguing that politicians and staff could avoid accountability by using these features. Members of both the Cabinet and Shadow Cabinet use WhatsApp and Signal. No shit. The Cabinet Office said records must be retained in line with guidance. So they have to retain records already of what's going on in these messages. I imagine, though, that's minutes rather than actual message transcripts.
Didn't those leaks of all the Labour people bad-mouthing Corbyn and his followers come out from WhatsApp?
Yeah, it was the Labour inter-office WhatsApp group.
Doing some trot bashing.
Basically. So the current guidance for the UK government is that a record only needs to be retained if it's needed for substantive discussions or decisions in the course of conducting business, which basically is so broad that it can just be ignored if they want to get rid of something dodgy. But we know why this is going on, right? This is anti-Tory campaigners saying they want rules for but not they know that the Labour leaks were really damaging to Labour. They want to damage the Tories in a similar way, so they want to basically just get eyes on this. Several freedom of information requests have been denied, so they're calling it a cloak of secrecy, which isn't.
Oh wow!
Which isn't.
That sounds spooky.
And yeah, so we get a nothing response from the government at the moment. But I do find it funny, this idea that they have to maintain a record, because it just shows again how much we're moving into this kind of this tech age where nothing is really done in-house. So before you had the issue of a lack of transparency because the civil service has its gloves on everything, right? And now government is so married to these different corporate interests, in the sense of they use all of the products. There's no in-house WhatsApp, for instance, and even if there was, it would cost some exorbitant amount to exist.
Oh
and
God, the government trying to do tech, can you imagine? I mean, they spent how many trillions on that track and trace thing, or whatever it was called.
I can't remember, it was like 60 million or 70 million or something.
And it never worked, and they just borrowed the API off Google instead.
Yeah, it was horrific. And there was also issues with cronyism there as well.
Oh yeah.
Tories and nepotistic cronyism. Who would have told us?
Yeah, never. It was something to do with a spreadsheet, wasn't it? They were storing all the information in a spreadsheet that was too small.
Oh
Uh,
God, yeah. So they were working off the Windows 95 version of Excel because they'd never updated it, and so
oh God.
they were working off XLS spreadsheets instead of XLSX, and XLS could only store up to a certain number of entries.
There was also I think they were recording the records horizontally as well as vertically, or no, vertically as well as horizontally. And obviously, on an Excel
Oh,
sheet, you can't go. You can go significantly further down than you can go to the right. So they were doing it the wrong way around. So they ran out of room very quickly. It was like professionally, because it's not too far off what I do for a day job. It just drove me insane.
oh God, yeah. Just to correct myself earlier, Track and Trace actually cost £37 billion. Rather than
Christ.
and 70 million was just, I think, this one contract, but it's the 37 billion is over 2 years, so they were given a 2-year budget.
I'm pretty sure the moon landings were less expensive than that.
The thing is as well, do you know who it was that they paid to administrate it?
Public Health England was someone who involved.
Serco. So Serco was the distributor. If you don't know,
Yeah.
Serco is one of the largest government contractors, along with ISS, and I can't remember what the name of the other one was, but they went bankrupt a couple of years ago. Oh God, they were biggest UK contractors. Let me see. UK government contractors. That's probably a good idea. Capita, which is the medical one,
Yes.
which is horrific. When I went to do my medical for the RAF, I passed first time, but it was well known that Capita would often fail people on a medical the first time so that you would appeal and then be sent back, and then they would know that it was your second go at it, and then they would pass you. And
so they get more money.
so they
per,
would get double. They'd get double the money, and of course they.
Oh
didn't,
my God!
So they obviously didn't care, which ones that they want to. I'm trying to which was the biggest one. It basically overextended in France because they were international, and I'm trying to remember UK military contractors. No, I don't.
I can see Harry freaking out in the chat in the same way that I was. Imagine not using Oracle for a database the size of a country.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I can't find this here, but basically, Serco is one of these huge ones, and they are. We can't say full fact. We can't say if Test and Trace has cost more than the Channel Tunnel yet.
Oh my God!
22 billion.
I was thinking of government projects that have cost in that order of magnitude.
Yeah.
And it is things like the Channel Tunnel, the moon landings, like the Manhattan Project, like stuff like that.
£22 billion is the budget allocated by the government for the first year of Test and Trace. By the end of October 2020, £4 billion was spent. We don't know how much the whole first year will have cost. So basically, building the Channel Tunnel over 5 years cost $4 billion a year. So even if, because the Channel Tunnel took 5 years to construct, right? So
yes.
£4 billion a year. In fact, no, 16 over 5, so less than £4 billion a year. Whereas Test and Trace cost £4 billion between March and October. So that's absolutely insane. Obviously, that's adjusted for today's money, right? Like the channel thing, which is nuts. It's just.
Welcome to government tries to do technology, ladies and gents.
Well, the other thing that I can think of was basically the rollout of the NHS centralised system, which was supposed to, because obviously, so for those of you who don't know, the way the NHS works in the UK is the NHS is split up into a series of charitable trusts, which all have different ways of managing their different regions that they're responsible for, and there are often multiple NHS charitable trusts in different areas depending on what NHS needs are stipulated by the constituencies. So I think Tailed Feature's done some work for them, so he probably knows more about the internals than I do. But this obviously caused an issue because patient records are supposed to be transferred from trust to trust, and it being a public system where everyone's working off different technology, it's awful. They don't transfer properly. It's really hard to get yourself re-registered. You have to fill out an exorbitant amount of paperwork, and obviously even if you're in the same area but you get transferred to a specialist under the auspice of a different NHS trust, you may have to basically re-enter all of your details. So it basically pointless. Again, just reminds me of the ineptitude in the military, where you would just have to fill out the same form over and over and over again for different departments because they were all contracted out to different companies, and data protection meant they couldn't store they couldn't transfer your information between departments, even within the military. Really annoying.
Centralization, woo.
Yes, well, centralization would have worked better. So of course the government said, well, let's centralize this, and then hired a private company for an exorbitant amount of money. Centralization of the NHS. Let's see. I can't remember how much it cost because mass centralization, which was around 2014, and they basically said we're going to have to stop doing this because the new system was worse than all the old systems. All the old systems were incompatible with the new system, so everything had to be entered manually. And then because everyone was accessing the system at the same time, it meant that recall times were really, really slow. So they didn't assign enough server space. So and internal bandwidth. So you would send off your thing, you'd say, I want this patient's records, and instead of that going to your local NHS trust, it went to the local NHS trust, which then requested it from the centralised system, which would then come back and then send it back to you. But if you entered any information incorrectly, if anything had been entered incorrectly when it was added to the centralised system, if the server was having a bad day, I mean, doctor surgeries are always rammed in the UK anyway, so it's being accessed all the time, so it was just dead slow, and it was horrific. My mother remembers it when she was working as a nurse. It was not fun. It's just...
Have you heard about when they tried to do some more desktop automation?
No, go on.
So, I was talking to one of my colleagues at work about this, and he was telling me about, I think he'd done some work for them in the past, and they, rather than writing like specialist programs to sort of do things in the back end, send information between servers and that without any input from a user or from a user, I guess, simulation, what they did is that they decided to do what's called robotic process automation.
Okay.
So they were basically simulating an end user sat behind the keyboard.
Yeah.
Which meant they needed a separate laptop for every user they were trying to simulate. So they ended up with these rooms full of like shelves full of open laptops, just moving around with things moving around on the screen, rather than getting like one or two servers to do it.
Oh dear. Yeah, usually you would do that without the UI having to be generated. Right?
Yes, you just have services talking to each other rather than desktop automation, which is the worst.
That sounds pretty horrific. But how did we get onto this? Oh yeah, we were talking about how much test and trace cost. And then because the government was being...
we started off talking about WhatsApp and government communication.
Yeah, God. Government communication. I mean, was it like Sir Humphrey from Yes Minister, who's like... You know, you could tell it was a badly worded proposal because it passed first time, you know, that sort of thing. But yeah, Serco, which is the company which was handed test and trace, horrific company, and they're the same people who, when I went to get a washing machine from because ours had broken when I was on station, the person who was standing there in front of a row of 40 washing machines told me they would have to order a new washing machine, and that I would then be served a notice of when I could collect it, because they weren't allowed to be over or under surplus supply. So they had 40 washing machines. for the purposes of replacing the washing machines. But he said because it takes so long to get a new washing machine in, it meant that for their next quota they would technically be under surplus and therefore in void of their contract, so they couldn't do it. So they had to do it, and then I had to collect this washing machine at a particular time very, very quickly, because if they were also found to have too many washing machines, a man would arrive in a van to take away the extra washing machine from them, and they would also be in void of contract. So not that government contracts are poorly written at all or anything like that, you know.
So they had to have exactly
40 washing machines
whenever a government man walked past.
Yeah, basically. Horrific.
Oh my god.
Excuse me there. There we go. So, yeah, pretty horrific. I hear, just don't trust Serco. Serco have been leeching off the government for years and years and years and years and years.
I could see people in the chat saying, like, calculating how many things however many billions was. 29 Millennium Domes. 12 space shuttles.
It is insane. Absolutely insane.
Oh, man.
This is one of the big things.
It's like the private sector is about 40 years ahead of the public sector on tech. It's unbelievable.
The thing is, they're also 50 years ahead on contract lawyers.
Yes.
So that's the other thing. It's like, I mean, I've mentioned it before, but my mate of mine who is a pilot with the RAF, he said, we worked out that it would be more financially viable to the Royal Air Force to give every single pilot at the 5-year point, which is their sort of minimum point. Oh, am I roboting?
You were just now, but I think that was when you were sneezing.
Oh, sorry. I'm just looking at YouTube. It's not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming, and I'm going, God, let us not have a repeat of last week. But yeah, you could buy 13,373,860 duck houses for that kind of money. Thanks, Ian.
Amazing, yeah. Keep them coming. They're funny.
But yeah, keep them coming. But a mate of mine who's in the RF, they worked out it was more efficacious if you said to all the pilots, because the pilots have to do 6.5 years minimum after training, right? So they finish their training, which takes about 5 years. Then they go off, they get streamed, they do their type rating on whichever aircraft they've been assigned, and then off they go. They have to do 6 years from there, which usually means they end up at about 11 years, and then they go away. So they worked out it is more efficacious to give every pilot at that 6-year point £1 million to stay on for 11 years, and that was cheaper than the current system, which is basically all of the pilots leave at that point and go get cushy civilian jobs, and then they have to train new pilots, which. Yeah, I mean, I was only an air traffic... I don't know how much it costs to train a pilot, but in order to train me as an air traffic controller, it costs the British taxpayer £2.5 million. So...
Oh my god.
I don't think I'll be repaying my debt to society anytime soon, folks. But
absolute sponge on society, this man.
Absolutely ludicrous. And that's not even... I mean, my salary is kind of included in that, but I definitely wasn't paid that much. I wish I'd seen that much, but I was only paid... I don't know. My training salary was like 30 grand. So there you go. But yeah. So more efficacious to give every pilot £1 million, and similarly, they worked out that with the amount of money that gets lost on these contracts, and also the dissatisfaction within the ranks that it causes, they would be better off hiring contract lawyers at market value, which is like up to £2 million each per year. And then that would save them money in the long run, because you don't run into stupid things like the company like Serco buying the cheapest washing machines they can and then not giving them to personnel when they need them.
Yes, and they're going to get paid regardless because of the contract.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we had a weird one when I was going through training, which was the company... I'd like nothing against some of the guys who worked for these companies who were the kind of boots on the ground, because they were our chefs and so on, and they were great. And we had this guy called Steve, and he was so good with the food that they gave him, and he was only allowed to order off a particular list of items, but he basically was able to. He was so unwasteful. He was so good at the cooking that they were making a profit per meal, and according to the contract, they're not allowed to make a profit. So Serco renegotiated the contract. So what ended up happening was we ended up getting smaller meals which were served on smaller plates, as if we wouldn't notice. At that time when you're in training and you need all the calories you can get because you're knackered all the time and you're just doing exercise a lot.
Christ.
So smaller plates, smaller portions, less variety in the food, less variety in the menu selection. We lost all of our desserts. We used to get things like red velvet cheesecake and different types of crumble, and this was all replaced by basically one form of shortbread and yogurt. And we were so angry about this at the time.
God, they wonder why no one wants to join the military.
You used to get like white chocolate and raspberry dusted cheesecake and proper crumbles and different types of custard, and this was replaced by chocolate sponge or shortcake.
Why didn't you start a military coup at that point?
You're not allowed to strike. If you're in the military, it's illegal to strike. So you're just not allowed to do it. In fact, it's one of the only things which you can still be hanged for in the country.
Wait, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just because it's on the books doesn't mean it happens. But yeah, if you refuse to soldier in the, you go straight to military prison, or if you instigate others, you can also be hanged. So don't do that. Then,
crumble though, is it worth it? The red velvet cheesecake.
It was a very good red velvet cheesecake.
Think about it.
Is it worth going to prison for 12 years? I don't know. Because military sentences are also so much harsher than regular ones. It's quite funny. It's kind of a bit like the American system of 3 strikes and you're guaranteed a prison sentence. But whether or not it gets recorded because a lot of it's handled in-house, it's quite corrupt, is another thing. But so, for instance, if you get caught drunk driving, you have obviously the speed awareness course and that sort of thing. But if you're in the military and you get caught drunk driving, I mean, technically, although it's rarely enforced, apart from for repeat offenders, obviously, it's just two years in the nick in a military prison. So, can you imagine, like, you going 35 in a 30 by accident and you go to prison for 2 years?
Just get hanged.
Not every offence is hanging, Joz.
Oh, what about piracy? Is that a hanging offence still?
Yeah, piracy is definitely treasonous hanging offence. Clearly, there you go. EC90 says of the Suez Canal, they were trying to do a handbrake turn. Can you just? I did see, what is the there's like the meme where it's going and it's got the train grinding on two sets of rails as it goes down, and they've done that with the Evergiven, whatever.
The trolley problem.
Yeah, that too. That's pretty good. Mr. Gently Benevolent says £22 billion. That's 30. Oh my goodness, 31 billion 428. No, it's more than that. 3 billion 142 million 857,142 jars of deliciously bland Nescafe Gold if bought at full price. But what if it's 3 for 2, Mr. Gently Benevolent?
I'm sure you can get a bulk deal, if you get over 1 million at once.
3 for 2, like, ridiculous. But please put commas in your next answer so I can just ascertain the number quickly. 22 billion is also 71 miles of high-speed 2. Private companies offer excellent value for money, and I'm sure their practices are beyond reproach, says Ian B. Yeah, surely.
71 miles.
71 miles. high
Well, the
speed
high-speed train, that's like 10 minutes.
High
Probably not even that.
Well, high speed 2. Where's high speed 2 going between again? I can't remember.
Initially, it was London and Birmingham, but I believe
Yeah.
they've extended it further north.
Yeah, I thought it was going up as far as Liverpool. I wasn't sure. High stage 2 proposed route. One second, I'm going to sneeze. Oh my goodness, sorry about that, folks. Yeah, so yeah, it's supposed to go to Brighton, and then they
I
want
mean, I don't know how much faster
Birmingham.
it is than... Wait, just to Birmingham?
Birmingham. But then they wanted to then extend it so it connected to the West Coast main line, basically.
I don't know how much faster it was supposed to be than a regular like high-speed train at the moment.
Well, I doubt it would be
So-
as fast as the bullet train. How?
Well, the French TGV is unbelievable. I don't know if you've been on that.
No.
The European trains are insanely fast, but I mean,
Well,
I've been
our regular trains are like 85 mile an hour.
exactly. I've been on the Eurostar from Brussels to London, and it takes like an hour and a half. And obviously the bit in Belgium and France is significantly quicker than, obviously it says down to go in the tunnel, but even when it comes out the other side, it's not anywhere near as fast as it was on the continent.
Well, apparently HS2 would be 224 mile an hour. So
Okay, I mean that's pretty quick. I think the TGV is something like 250. Like it's on that ballpark.
they're trying to work out 6 reasons why it's so expensive. Because it can accommodate 18 trains per hour, which is more than any other high-speed line in the world. There's a lot of risk, apparently. So, apparently, the company, the directors of the companies who are managing the HS2 are saying that they haven't factored in enough risk and uncertainty in the calculations, and that they're underplaying the cost of it anyway. They have to buy all the property along the route. They have to move several rivers. They have to make extra cuttings and viaducts. They're not very efficient. So that's basically.
I mean, by the time it's finished, we'll have bloody hyperloops.
I mean, by the time it's finished, we'll all be living on Mars, clearly. So
Exactly.
Elon Musk.
You could probably get to Mars for less money.
When was HS2 commissioned? It was.
I bet the moon landings cost less.
HS2 was started in January of 09. January of 09. So they've been working on this now for 12 years.
12. Yeah, Christ.
HS2 cost so far. As of the 11th of February last year, HS2 plans to launch in 2026, although it could be as late as 2031, and it could cost. So far, it's been allocated £56 billion, and it could end up costing £106 billion.
So I just googled moon landing cost, and the first 2 links are moon landing at Amazon, and the second one is great prices on 1969 moon landing eBay. According to CBS, the moon landings were 28 billion.
Wait. Construction Inquirer. HS2 potential construction cost hits 1.2 cost pressures. Hits an additional 1.2 billion pounds.
Okay. So, I don't think the moon landing was as much. That was 288 billion in today's money.
Okay, yeah, that's quite expensive.
Worth it though. Totally worth it.
So apparently, because they're doing, they have they make it sound like they've only got 500 apprentices working on it at the moment, but it's actually
all of them climate ones.
15,000 jobs and 500 apprentices. But basically, so far they've spent of that 56 billion, 40.3, with a contingency of 4.3 on top, so like 45 billion. So, and they're not anticipating they may get twice that amount of money if they just wait, basically. Because that's the other thing. If you're the company who's working on this, right, you just kind of let it go. You let it go on as long as you like. You milk that government gravy train as long as possible, surely.
Of course. I mean, if it was like demanded by the market, then they would be getting significantly more of a move on.
Well, again, this is all to do with contract lawyers. There's no, basically, it's too much good faith, effectively, on one side and none on the other. So one side can keep, like, why are they not? Basically, they're like, you've got this much money to do it. You have until you have until now to do it. If you need extra money, you need to submit Y, basically. And it can only be at cost, right? You have a massive markdown on the price of materials, etc. There is no profit to be made in it. And if you're late delivering the product, then you're not getting paid. Like, you don't get any hours for that. You just get the money for materials, and you have to do that. Why not? I suppose they're trying to avoid cutting corners with that by wording it so poorly, but I think it's just that they have shit contract lawyers with no accountability, right?
I'm sure that would be some sort of scandal as well if it came out that they were being too harsh on the builders or whatever.
Well, all it takes is for the workers to unionize, right?
Exactly, yeah, and then Labour will be all over it.
HS2, workers of the world, unite! And demand fair living wages. And it's like, but you said that you would have it done by then. Oh, but it's the fat cats. Well, it's like, it's like when we bailed out the banks and absolutely failed miserably to put appropriate conditions on them. Like they were still able to give themselves exorbitant bonuses and that sort of thing, rather than all that money just going straight back into the government pocket, because that's where it should have gone until they paid off their obligation, right? They don't get to make profit.
I'm fairly sure the English banks did pay off all their debts.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure the British ones did, yeah.
Pay off.
They're from 2008.
Debt. How much did we bail them out, and how much did they do it?
I may be thinking of the American ones, but I'm sure. I from what I remember, it's not that big an issue as people say.
Bank Rescue Package 2008.
If I'm entirely wrong, then I'd like to be corrected.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't realise that they'd paid it off, but I mean, they basically gave shares to the government, right? That was the thing.
Oh, that's a good bloody start. Brilliant.
So the government gained shares in Lloyd's, RBS, and several others. The shares in RBS and Lloyd's have now started to be sold off. Government claims that this will more than make up the profit.
Okay, so they've kind of paid it back,
but also you think about, because of the time lost with that money, right? So inflation has made, even inflation alone has made those shares worth what they're worth. But they can't charge interest on shares that they own, right? So they can't.
Sure.
They can't be like, well, we've got £107 billion worth of Lloyd's shares, but you're going to have to give us more shares per year, depending on when we choose to sell them off. That doesn't work out, does it? So
yeah, so you can't demand the government sells them off, right?
Yeah, and you can't. It just seems really dodgy to me that I don't see. I mean, the idea of them gaining shares, according to the government, is so that it would increase confidence. But I think it was just a move by the banks who were like, yeah, you're invested in us now, so you have to now keep us afloat if we run into trouble again. And secondly, we don't pay interest on this bailout that you've given us, basically.
That's a good point. Yeah, the interest on it wouldn't be anything.
I mean, they wouldn't be able to calculate it effectively, right? Because
pesky bankers.
Pesky bankers
would have got away with it too.
That's what I think. I mean, people are, again, feel free to correct us.
I mean, it's technically they paid it back, yeah, but in a strange way.
They socialized the debt. Yeah. The British banks paid back the government bailouts with interest, apparently. I mean, I can't find a particular reference to that, says, but But it seems to me that several banks got away with just having shares, which is curious.
Yes, it's a strange one because, as I said, they've technically paid it back, but in terms of the amount of assets they've given over.
Well, the expectation is that the government holding shares increases confidence in the bank because the government is holding shares. And
I mean, I'd like the shares myself. Thank you.
Imagine if they just gave it so everyone in the UK owned a stake in.
Right,
and you'll come into your Lloyd's TSB shares when you're 18 years old, young Joz.
Imagine that. That would be great.
How much is a Lloyd's share? How much is a Lloyd's Bank share?
Can I buy some?
£42. There you go.
Wait, Roblox is worth more than that.
Roblox?
Yeah, I bought a Roblox share for the meme. And it was worth like 60 quid or something at the time.
67. There you go.
Yeah.
That's pretty mental. Although stocks and shares, after the whole GameStop conspiracy, who knows what's going on with that?
What do you mean conspiracy? It's made me plenty of money.
Let's see what else we got here. I could waste that money if the government would subsidise me. Oh, sorry. Are the train workers unionised? I can't remember. I mean, there are several industries which have really heavily unionised workers. Nurses come to mind, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Teachers, obviously.
I believe aren't the tube, specifically tube drivers.
Yeah, TfL has its own union.
Well, because I swear they are, because they had this thing with the trains where they mandated that they had a guard and a driver, but they didn't really need to.
I think the trains have RMT, isn't it? It's
I don't know.
It's basically the transport train union. I can't remember what RMT stands for, but
I care that little for unions. I don't even need to learn their names.
But they haven't turned up enough in the National Union of Rail, Maritime and Transport. There you go. Okay. So I don't know. They haven't turned up massively in the news over here, but I'm sure that they are quite heavily unionised. What was quite funny when I worked in retail was that they were unionised, but no one gave a shit. It's like everyone there was either a single mum working part-time or a student working off their debt, or like a long time termer who knew full well that they were never getting off minimum wage. So I suppose,
yeah, I can imagine. Wait, so do you mean that they were part of the union but didn't care, or that they never bothered to join?
We had like this union rep who would go around and be like, "Oh, go on, be part of the union, etc., etc., etc." But they were like, "Oh, the union gets you higher wages, etc." But Morrison's was one of those companies where if they raised union wages, they would raise everyone's just to be in line with everything. And the union had the audacity when the minimum wage increase went up to claim that was their doing. They were like, "We raised your wages by 15%. And we were just like, "Yeah, but we lost free healthcare, free dental, free like all these little extra perks. Childcare for all the single mums disappeared because the wage had gone up by £1 an hour, and suddenly they had to pay for that out of their own pocket, and it didn't feel quite so swish anymore. They actually ended up worse off because perks aren't taxed,
Yeah. So unions just ruin everything.
They make it difficult for businesses, and they make it difficult for workers. Simple as. Very short-term oriented as well. If we could have got we only got an 8% pay rise this year. If we could get 15%, we still wouldn't be happy. That was the union attitude, despite the fact that maybe the company was only able to afford a 2% rise. Anyway, that aside, I don't know how we ended up going down on this enormous tangent where we're in retail.
Trains, costs.
Yeah, to the cost of how to do things. TfL has 3 different unions, apparently.
Yes, because I know that tube drivers have incredibly high wages for what they're doing.
Oh, yeah, like a London tube driver salary... Oh, excuse the police coming by.
Well, they're
The
on to you.
the
He's
base.
here. I've got him.
Okay, the base pay of a tube driver. Guess how much it is?
Something outrageous, like 54 grand a year.
Yeah, £55,000
Oh,
a year.
nailed it.
£55,000 and 55,011 pounds. Yeah, is to drive a train, ladies and gentlemen, in London.
I'm pretty sure it's mostly computer controlled anyway because of the.
Oh yeah. They don't go and drive the train. What they do is
Yeah,
they turn a key and sit there, and it stops and starts all by itself, and they're just there for an emergency.
Because that they, I think, was it something that Khan was talking about, that they've done this huge computer system to kind of control all the trains and make sure they didn't crash into each other.
During training, which lasts 12 to 16 weeks, trainee drivers earn £32,375.
Oh my god!
This is 2 years ago, mind, right? So it's more now, I imagine.
Of course, yeah.
And
well, it's not going to go down, is it?
No. Driver salary 2021 is still this. The majority of London Underground train drivers, approximately 3,000 of them, made between 70 and 80,000 a year last year, when including overtime and benefits. The base pay is 55k.
I mean, could you commute from somewhere outside of London so it's easy living?
I was trained to be an air traffic controller, one of the most skilled jobs in the world, and my training pay was less than a TfL train driver. My pay after salary. My mate who flies jets for a living gets less than that. That's mental. Apparently, no, they're not earning 100k, but they are earning 55. They're like, it's one of these debunked sites. It's like, no, London Underground tube drivers are not earning £100,000 per year. The Sunday Times excitedly reported that they earn more than an airline pilot, noting, of course, that they don't debunk the fact that airline pilots aren't on 100k either. It's just airline pilots' salaries vary massively unless you're working for BA, right? So
yeah.
Far from being an ordinary tube driver as an aircraft test pilot is from the person flying an EasyJet plane. Only 9 tube drivers were paid over £100,000 in the last year. Imagine how cushy that job is. I mean, I get that tubes are not pleasant places to be, but I'm looking at the kind of jobs. I'm coming to the end of my degree right now, and I'm looking for the jobs that I might be going to work in. I could take on YouTube full time if I'm insane. As much as some people in the chat might appreciate that, but I'm looking at jobs and I'm going, graduate researcher, that sort of thing, working in science. You might earn up to £40,000, but more realistically, you'll start at 22k. And I'm going, or I could just go into training as a TfL rail driver.
I mean, really, an underground train is literally like a sideways lift. Like, why are they getting paid that amount to like go sideways?
Oh, I mean, I know that TfL Rail isn't doing particularly well. It's heavily in debt, and
Khan's bankrupted it, hasn't he?
Yeah, and they've frozen fares again for another year, which means that because it's one of the only things which is keeping him in power. And the mayoral election. I've just got my poll card through today, actually, for the mayoral election. I don't know who I'm going to vote for yet, but it's not going to be Sadiq Khan. It's probably going to be Lawrence Fox, isn't it? Let's be real.
I was going to say, who are the contenders? Is David Curtin on there? Is he running for London
I don't know
mayor?
if David Curtin's running for mayor, actually. London mayoral candidates 2021.
Yeah, there's Sean Bailey's the Tory guy, right?
Yeah, so Sean Bailey... who won in 2018 as the candidate. Sadiq Khan is running, obviously rerunning. The Liberal.
How long has he been in power for, Khan? Since Boris left, right?
Yeah, Khan was. He's been serving since 2016, so he's fucked London in less than 5 years. But he, Sadiq Khan, honourable member of Parliament for Tooting. Before he became...
was he an MP?
Yeah, he was...
I know nothing about his history, if I'm honest.
He was an MP from 2005 till 2016, so he's been around a long time.
I know, wasn't he a lawyer for some jihadi at one point?
Well, he specialized in human rights issues.
Right.
And which way he fell on that is one thing, but the reason he basically survived the Blair years was because he was openly critical of the Iraq invasion, even if we all know the reason he's critical of that is not because of like liberalism and that, but because racism or something, and he just didn't like Gordon Brown, but he was a member of the cabinet. I think he was the Minister for Transport for a while, and then he served under Miliband before becoming Mayor of London. So,
oh my God,
yeah, lots of issues. He's also he wants to expand Gatwick. That's one of his big things as well. But yeah, again, just avoid sneezing. Sorry, chaps.
You've been sniffing some pepper. Doing a line of pepper before you start.
I don't know what it is. I think because it's been sunny today and suddenly the pollen count is coming up, despite my my antihistamine might be running out. That's basically what it is.
Go and have some more drugs. You'll be alright.
No. But yes. Can't hear his name without hearing Sadiq Khan resign. Yes. Sadiq Khan resign.
The one positive, I guess, from Khan's tenure is Academic Agent getting more videos about him.
Assuming that you want to support AA getting more viewers, is
positive for AA himself.
I think
the rest of us.
At one point he memed that he would basically if Rose of Dawn beat him in subscribers, I think if she hit 50k or something, then in order to pull ahead he would instigate the week of Sadiq Khan videos, where he just released a different video on Sadiq Khan per day, basically telling him to resign. But didn't happen anyway.
Apparently you can't breathe. That's what I've heard from the chat.
Oh, sorry folks. Yeah. Where's Kirk when you need him? What are the demographics of London now? I mean, I think we have some more up-to-date demographic information on London than the 2011 census, but it's really hard to find aggregate data. I can't find it now, but as of 2011, 44.9%, so let's say 45%, are white British. 37% were born outside of the UK, including 24.5% of that were born outside of Europe. So,
isn't London one of the largest French cities?
I don't know. I mean, London itself is
by French population.
London itself is 8.5 million.
Yes, but Paris is quite small in comparison. It's only a couple of million.
I mean, the French aren't listed as a significant minority group in London, but I don't know.
But I don't think French cities are that large. Like if you go to, I don't know, Marseille or Lille, or I can't think of any of the other big ones, Toulouse or something, they're not huge.
No.
So even if you had a few 100,000 French in London, which is more than possible, it will be one of the larger French cities.
Well, I know, there's a significant Indian population in London. There's a significant Polish and Romanian population.
Yes.
And then it's like the Turks. There's quite a lot of Italians, if I'm honest, and the Irish, but that's about
Bloody Irish.
And the Bangladeshis, who run all the Indian restaurants because nobody can tell them apart. Basically, like all the Indian people I know are like, yeah, we don't run Indian restaurants. We run your financial district, and the Bangladeshis run the Indian restaurants. So.
Well, yeah, the Indians are the ones in the cabinet as well.
Yeah. So basically, like 63% of London is born in Britain, and of that, half of that is actually native, or 2/3 is native. So 2/3 of 2/3 basically, and the rest is foreign born or second gen. So
yeah. So what's it called? John Cleese was correct then.
Well, yeah, it's no longer an English city. I mean, that's really clear. I mean, even the people who ascribe themselves to be white British includes some third gen immigrants as well who have basically shrugged off their heritage. But it is, yeah, quite disturbing to me.
I did find it interesting. I lived in the south for a while. I've been to London a lot and walking around and not hearing any English at all.
Yeah, I mean, I live in a very cosmopolitan area, and I feel a palpable sense of relief is the wrong word, but it's quite comforting when you're walking along. Like, I was out in the park today, and a couple were walking their dog, and they've got they've got strong English accents, and that was comforting because for the last few months I haven't heard a proper English accent. Really, it's just everyone I know is foreign. Apart from some of the faculty at the university I work at, it's just not a thing.
Yeah,
Englishness is not a thing in London, and I can only think that these numbers have become more drastic, more dramatic over the past 10 years.
of course. Yeah,
I filled out my census. I don't know about you.
Yes. My father tried to record his ethnicity as a rather rude word.
Really? What? Mulatto or something? I don't know.
No, I was filling it in, and he was in the kitchen or something, and my mum was like shouting questions at him from the living room. And I'm not going to say the word on your channel. He said ethnic identity, and he just shouted it back. His voice on the wind, shouting racial slurs.
Did it begin with an N, Joz?
No, it began with a W.
A W? Oh no. No, I think I know what that one is. And is it a 3-letter word?
It was.
Okay, yeah. My goodness. Is he?
That would be telling.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, it's going to be scary. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to have a fun video out for you all once we have a look at the demographic makeup. I mean,
you are Mr. Statistics after all.
It's the one, Mr. Statistics. Well, if I can actually pass these actual things, then that'd be good. To be clear, I do pass. I get high firsts in statistics, but the demographic makeup's going to be interesting because, of course, this is one of those things like Renard Camus, who's the French guy who wrote Le Grand Remplacement, which obviously the Great Replacement coined the phrase, etc. And Douglas Murray's The Strange Death of Europe and that sort of thing is accurate.
Yes,
because when they say replacement, though, it is a cult. I think they've got the wrong end of the stick because white people are not being bred out of existence. For instance, we are below replacement birth rate, and I think that is what is causing the issue more than the immigrants coming, right? But what is happening is because we are below replacement birth rate, and we are importing so many people into these we are establishing colonies in our own country. Even if it's not like official delegations from different countries, etc. The resultant effect is the erosion of British culture, because the culture has to exist in a homogenous sense for it to be stable. And so you want cultures to be exposed to enough culture that they can develop and evolve over time, but you don't want it to be so flooded with different cultural influences that it loses all identity. This is a curious thing with the left, where they want everyone to be able to express their heritage and identity at no cost, and then for that heritage and identity to effectively become like this global homogenous identity which is devoid of national boundaries and genetic signifiers, right? So
yeah, so I think I saw one statistic on the population of, I think it must have been Great Britain or the United Kingdom, sort of including Scotland and Wales and Ireland, in the 50s was something like 50 million, and that's like, and then like a few thousand people from other parts of the world. And then nowadays it's 55 million white British people, and something like 10 million from the other parts of the world. So you can see that the native population hasn't gone up that much, but the non-native population has gone up by thousands of percent.
Well, it's like in 19 like Britain also has like this weird history with its population, right? So in 1851, I'm just going to use England as an example because I have the stats here. England's population was 16.8 million in 1851. And then it basically doubled. It was 30.5 million in 1901 because...
I know that London was the largest city of the world, of the whole world, and in its tenure as the largest city, it basically tripled in size.
Yeah, it's mental. Although most of the growth was attributed to the Irish fleeing. Ireland has had a really horrific population decline because of, obviously all the famines and the issues there, and then the troubles. So the population of Ireland, for instance, was in 1841 was 8.2 million, whereas today it's like 4 million. You know, it's halved over time. But so from 1901, when it was 30.5 million, to 1997, the population of the UK was fairly stable. I mean, it was going up, but stably going up. And then 1997, of course, Tony Blair's government opened the floodgates, and we saw this enormous cultural influx from foreign populations. To the tune of, I mean, it did ramp up, but I think it's still going over 300,000 net in per year at the moment.
God, yeah.
Which is,
I mean, it's weird how much of a sort of collective amnesia people have about that it's only very recent.
Yeah, I mean, people are like, oh, you know, we've always been a multicultural, etc. It's like, fuck off.
No, we haven't.
In 1996, the immigrant to native ratio was, the native to immigrant ratio was 20-1. So for every 20 white British people, there was one immigrant, and that includes European immigrants. This is not just quote unquote brown people. This is, you know, anyone from a foreign background. It was like 20-1, and then now it's 6-1.
So then in 1950 it was like 200-1 or something
like that. Like, it's mental how much this has never happened. This kind of
it is weird collective amnesia. I mean, people my age. I mean, I was only born in 1996. We assume that it was always like that. It's quite a shock to people because I guess it's kind of like an Americanization, because America's always been multicultural from its foundation.
Yeah, even if you're taking the kind of multiculti of European identities clashing with one another. Yeah. Even
like they go on about their African influence, which I'm fine to accept. So like it's a bit of a weird like Americanism that English people seem to have kind of taken in, is that, oh, we've always been like this, but we really haven't.
America is also enormous in that different states have obviously are the size of countries, so they've developed their own cultures, and they have their own separate legislatures, and it all acts slightly differently. So America's a really strange one, but the UK has always had that kind of fortitude and homogeneity, and it's no longer there. And like, for good or ill, no one can deny that the great cultural replacement is happening, because at every stage an English, like, the way no one is stepping forward, and I apologise for dropping my words there, nobody is stepping forward and saying and enshrining British traditions in law. No one is doing a France and saying, you know, if you go against British values, you'll be deported. Right? You know, if you complain about showing images of Muhammad or showing cartoons in a classroom, you'll be deported. Like, no one is saying that. No one is making a defense of British values, because, as has been taught in universities now for God knows how long, I mean, I've run into this problematic rhetoric all the time, is that the government said you must teach British values in schools, and those British values were democracy, the rule of law, individual liberty, and mutual respect and tolerance. Right?
Those historic British values of diversity and inclusion, yes.
No. So it's not even diversity and inclusion. It's just democracy, rule of law. So you You're not establishing a theocracy or a dictatorship. There's the rule of law, so you follow the rules or you go to prison. Individual liberty, you respect people's autonomy and their ability to make their decisions for themselves. And then mutual respect for and tolerance of those with different faiths and beliefs, and for those without faith. Because we had an issue with, Puritanism with atheism. So, at the time, I mean, that was the thing. And at the moment, they're teaching that is a racist statement, that Britain has these values, because it makes it sound implicitly like Britain has a monopoly on those values and no other nation can have them. I'm like, how stupid do you have to be for you to look at that and go, yep, if Britain's got those, no one else is allowed to value democracy or liberty or mutual respect or anything like that. Tolerance is only allowed. You're only allowed to be tolerant if you're British, Joz. Did you know that? Ridiculous.
I mean, I am British and I'm not particularly tolerant. So what does that say?
I don't know how tolerant you really are, Joz. If you end up being a massive racist now, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? But I'm a very tolerant person, but tolerance is very different to acceptance. Like,
True,
I can tolerate a racist spouting ridiculous views. I'm tolerant of that. I can, I can tolerate communists despite all the damage that they've caused, but I don't accept them. I want to see them shunned by society. I want to see them be lepers, social lepers who have to give their voices in fringe debates because nobody takes them seriously because they are so thoroughly and credibly debunked, for lack of a better term. Like, they should be treated as horrifically as someone who espoused, who's got the fucking swastika tattooed on them like American History X. I think that these people. So one of the girls in my class turned up with a hammer and sickle on her hat, and I haven't spoken to her since. But I got in a very angry, heated debate. And quite similarly, a friend of mine who is Polish, whose grandparents fled Poland and whose grandfather was murdered by the Soviets. She had to run into the fact that one of the faculty had like a hammer and sickle on their desk. When they were, in their office, like, not just a student, a member of the faculty, and she was having like a full-on breakdown because her, she's been all these horrific stories, and obviously she's only in Britain because they fled the fucking the fucking commies, So these are not things, but you can tolerate their existence. I don't want to see the espousing of communism criminalized. I just want to see it shamed, shunned, and despicably, disgustingly shunned. You know what I mean?
What if we paid companies to build like overflow facilities for communists?
Well, this is the curious thing as well. It's like the reason that fines don't work. You have to go.
Well, a fine is just a bribe to not put you in prison.
Yeah, well, it's all or nothing, right? 1 second.
Mr. Gently Benevolent agrees with me here. He's saying that commies need the full 40k treatment, suffer not them to live.
So here's the study, basically. They took a group of school kids, and I apologise to anyone who watched my Aiden Paladin stream because we already mentioned this. But so school used to say, don't pick your kids up late, and the parents, there were still some parents obviously who didn't pick up their kids late, who did pick up their kids late. So the school said, how do we stop this? We'll put in a fine of like £5 or whatever it was if you pick up your kid late. What happened in the aftermath of this? More kids were left late because the parents thought, oh, it's only £5, I'll turn up a bit late. Whereas shaming them, the kind of social shame before there was a financial incentive, just a get out clause. They felt no guilt. They felt no guilt if they'd paid the fine.
Because they feel like they've paid their debts, and that's made up for it. Yeah.
Whereas they feel bad about, because they're thinking of the human thing. They're thinking of the teachers they're keeping late and everything else. Whereas they go, it's just a fine. It's just a fine. So, in a similar way, like, you can't just fine people for a particular ideology or something like that. You can't say, if you espouse communism in this area, we'll charge you or something, because they won't. No one will care. It will just seem they'll just be like, Well, whatever. It's not something you exactly accidentally fall into either. So,
Yes, I think we should bring back transporting, but to the moon instead.
but then we'll end up with an Iron Sky style situation.
Or have you read The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, where they put a prison colony on the moon?
What happens in that one?
Well, so it's more it's Robert Heinlein, who wrote Starship Troopers. It's another book by him. It's more. I would recommend it actually. It is more ANCAP-y than Starship Troopers.
Right.
So obviously Heinlein's he's quite an interesting guy. I wouldn't say he's a libertarian really, because of obviously his Starship Troopers. But Moon is a Harsh Mistress is basically Earth supports its criminals to the moon, in the same way we used to send criminals to Australia.
Yeah.
But they couldn't afford to send more than like a governor and a few guards to sort of keep them under control.
Oh god.
So what happens is that, the prisoners have to then survive on the moon because they obviously have to live there.
It's quite difficult without an atmosphere.
Yes, so which means that they end up with a very brutally kind of capitalist society in order to survive. So even down to the oxygen being on a subscription fee.
Oh my god.
But that they rationalize that throughout the whole book, and the book is to do with them basically staging a revolution against the governor, and then setting up a society on the moon after they've done this revolution, and how they treat with Earth and how they form their government and that sort of thing. It's quite good.
I might have to read that then. Yeah, that sounds good. It just reminds me of. It reminds me of do you know what Brassai is?
No.
Brassai was an old satirical, old I say, like 90s I think, satirical news program where they just they just basically took a BBC news broadcast setup and just made ridiculous stories, and some of it was semi-scripted and some of it was live on the streets. So one of them is just this guy who he's in the middle of London and he goes up to a drug dealer, for instance. Like, he's just this black dude on a street corner, and he's asking him for these different drugs, but none of the drugs exist. So it's like, do you have any Harpy Bumble? That sort of thing. It's like, no, I've only got Coke. And it's just like, but I need some glue sniffer or something like that. I don't know. Like, just some ridiculous name.
Like, have you got any glue I can sniff?
No, it's just like, are you telling me you've got no, like, Happy Fried Chicken or something like that? I don't know. Just stupid things like that. And they did one of them where it's talking about paedophiles, and they say, this man was sent. They're showing footage of a guy being sent into space, and he's going, the convicted paedophile has been sent up into space to serve a term where he can be safely away from the rest of society. What's this? Breaking news. We are just getting news in now that it seems that when this man the paedophile was sent up into space, he was also sent there with an 8-year-old boy. Government sources are stating that this is the exact opposite of the thing that we wanted to happen. It's like, great show. If you like, very politically incorrect, and I think it was BBC, but I could be wrong on that. But yeah, absolutely brilliant. I might have to do a run through of that again because it's fantastic. Some are hit and miss, but hilarious.
You see, I think people that are in favour of helicopter rides are thinking too small.
Right,
I think we should be thinking about sending them into the sun instead.
I mean, that's quite expensive, but I do think that you could utilise a plethora of different techniques just for our own entertainment. You know how the film Death Race had the criminals compete in a death race and if they won so many races they would go free. Well, let's just bodge off the they can go free thing and just think of different ways in which we can force criminals to compete against each other to the death, just for fun. And they get eating privileges if they do, and if they don't, then they starve to death, that sort of thing.
Seems reasonable, yes. Definitely in line with the common law system of rehabilitative justice.
That's the sort of thing. They only get 3 games, though, and then they just get summarily hanged, decapitated, drowned, thrown out of a helicopter, burnt alive. So something like that. Obviously, we'd need to improve the justice system so there are no false positives.
Obviously, we need to get to a false accusation zero society.
But I think there are some people who are definitely guilty, and it's obvious that they're guilty, that we can put into the system. You know, people like Tony Blair.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Who, like, can you just imagine Tony Blair begging on his knees to survive as we force
in a gladiator pit. I mean, to be fair, the man would probably end up running the prison after a small amount of time.
I don't know about that, because unless he can convince the gladiators which are coming after him with nets and red hot pokers which they intend to insert in him, I don't know whether or not that's going to work. You know, make him experience hell on earth before he goes to hell to burn with the rest of his contemporaries. You know. I
mean, I'm pretty sure. I remember from when I was a little younger, my parents being convinced he was literally a demon. So maybe he is actually the devil.
I'm just reminded of the quote from Lord of the Rings when Frodo is in the prancing pony, and he goes, "I think an enemy would look fairer, but feel fouler." So, that's what Tony Blair is. He looks fair and feels foul, and that's exactly what he is. Admiral Bees is saying, like, pay-per-view hangings. Tell me you wouldn't pay to see a real scumbag get squicked. Well, you know, there's those YouTube channels on YouTube where they have the hydraulic press, you know, and they just press Furbies and phones and all that sort of thing. Like, again, Tony Blair under a hydraulic press. What would
I
it
remember?
be?
I think it was one of the early original Sherlock Holmes
every
stories.
Every pound,
where there's a man who gets pressed, I think.
Yeah, every pound that gets donated, like, the press moves a little bit lower, you know.
Or it's another ton of force.
So, how did your society abolish taxes? Well, everybody donates to crush criminals on a weekend.
I mean, to be fair, public hangings were a thing for a long time, and people did go to them.
Well, of course, it's a kind of bread and circuses thing, right? Like,
yeah, like the idea that humans wouldn't do that. I think a lot of people are wishful thinking there.
It's like, get caught stealing, get your hands chopped off, and then fed them. I don't know. Like, we're getting into proper puritanical.
Yeah, this is a bit Geneva. Wasn't it? I think.
I mean, all the Geneva Convention says is aim to maim, but not cause.
Oh no, I was talking about Calvinist Geneva.
Oh right, okay, like actual Geneva.
Zero crime rate. I believe it was it Sir Christopher Lee who. I mean, there's so many stories about the guy. Like, this one may or may not be true, but I think he, in his younger days, ended up accidentally stumbling upon the last execution in France, or one of the last public executions.
Oh right, yeah.
I don't know whether it was a guillotine or not, because I don't think they gave up that long ago. But yeah, no, I did read about that.
I think it's weird as well to think, because we haven't actually got rid of capital punishment for that long either.
No,
I think the last hanging was in the 60s, right? So it really it's less than 2 generations, really.
Yeah, I double dare the government to do a referendum on it. I dare them. See what happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the government is quite scared of referenda at the moment, I have to say.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think they're going to get if they did, they would get the result they want.
Unlike they were expecting a 52-48 in favour of not continuing capital punishment. In reality, they get 77-23 in favour.
Yeah. Someone's grandma.
You're a paedophile. I'm sorry, but you're for the rope, Milado. I don't want it to cost me £30,000 a year. Thank you very much.
Yes, if you kill a killer, then there's then there's the same amount of killers in the world. That's why you kill 12 of them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yes, it's you have the state mandated killer who just keeps killing people.
Yeah, it's just one guy. So the killers in the world keeps reducing.
Yes, the number of killers is only net for the first one. After that, it's all profit. Oh God, we didn't actually execute that many people either when it comes to these sorts of things. You know, it's
it might be a kind of what's he called, Charles Dickens kind of myth.
Well, I mean, like, in terms of the ones on the books, you know, you had a hanging every so often, and in terms of our prison system today. Or back then, sorry. It tends to be people spend a long time on death row, and it's the same in America where these things, you know, they can be there for 15 years. They can effectively serve a life sentence and then just get killed at the end of it anyway. It's weird like that.
Yeah, I mean, the way the Americans do it with the lethal injection and that is pretty grim. I will say.
Well, I mean, there's lethal injection. There was the electric chair. I mean, at least we had the decency to keep rope makers employed.
It's the class of an axe as well.
The what?
An axe.
Oh right, yeah. I thought you said something of the axe. I'm like the haft of the axe. You know, just we've got this.
The class. The class.
Yeah. We've got this axe, and we're gonna beat you to death with the blunt end of it.
It's like the executioner on his first day at work. He doesn't know what to do.
Like, until you beg for the sharp end, at which point it's no longer murder; it's euthanasia, right? Assisted suicide. Good grief. All right, what else has happened in the last week that I can think of? That's caught the eye. I can't think of anything particularly enormous.
Do you not have a list?
Well, I haven't. No, I've been working on other stuff, man. But
how have you?
and obviously, Fake Accents Unite is more spontaneous than other stuff. But unfortunately, I think it's only been an hour and a half. But I'm going to call it there. Aside from anything else, my nose is running like mad. But yeah, I will see if I can get another stream going on another psychological subject with Aiden Paladin at some point soon, because that seemed to be well received and that was fun. I'm in the middle of all my exams, dissertation, and everything. So, I mean, the channel's pretty quiet at the moment anyway. But I'm afraid don't be expecting too much out of me. But I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Fake Accents. I hope you've enjoyed the dulcet tones of Joz the Pirate, Army Matey. What's your channel on YouTube?
It's Joz the Great and Powerful. I'll put something in the chat so people can find it.
Joz the Great and Powerful. Excuse me. And yeah, first time on the channel. I think he's done really well. Do show your love for him in the comments, etc. But God,
if I get any subscribers, I might have to actually do a stream at some point.
You might actually have to do a stream and that sort of thing. So there we are. I hope that you've all enjoyed. I hope that this was entertaining. Do send me more topics and stuff you want us to talk about. Hopefully British will be back next week as well. And until then, take care everybody. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye-bye.